Okay, we'll get moving. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Personnel Committee meeting to order. And at this time, it would be public comment. No public comment. We're going to move on to review of the county executives' appointments and reappointments. The first one is Area Agency on Aging Board. Recommendation for appointment to the Area Agency on Aging Board. And I'm submitting the following individual for an appointment to the Area Agency on Aging Board, Robert Prunzik. Mr. Prunzik's term will begin July 1st, 2019 and end July 2nd, 2021. Looking to move that to full council. If there's anybody has any questions or comments on this appointment, now's the time. Okay, moving that up to full council. The second order here is the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board. Recommendation for appointment to the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board. Francis Gallagher is being considered for a 2-year term to begin April 19th and to end June 30th, 2021. If there's any questions or comments on the appointment, if not, we'll move it to full council. So moved. The third one is Farmland Preservation Board. Let me get past this letter and resume. Okay. Recommendation for a reappointment to Farmland Preservation Board. Submit the following individual for reappointment to the Farmland Preservation Board, Todd Gulick. Mr. Gulick is being considered for a reappointment to a 3-year term as a farmer director to begin July 1st, 2019 and end June 30th, 2022. On the back side is reappointment information. Any questions or comments? If not, we... And then you have another one. One more? Okay, let's move to that one. Another recommendation for reappointment to Farmland Preservation Board. Thank you. For Andrew Theory. Mr. Theory is being considered for a reappointment to a 3-year term as the public director to begin July 1st, 2019 and to end June 30th, 2022. And the reappointment information for Andrew Theory is on the back side of that in your packet. Questions or comments? So moved to full council. Next, we have Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Recommendation for citizen appointment to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Submitting the following individual as a citizen representative. Dr. Christopher Amato. Mr. Amato is being considered to complete Jamie Horvath's term following her resignation. Dr. Amato's term will begin April 19th, 2019 and end December 31st, 2021. Included in your packet is his resume. It's very impressive. Any questions or comments for the appointment? Move to full council.
Just say that I know him well, actually, and is a good choice for it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, recommend. Next is the Mental Health Early Intervention and Developmental Programs Advisory Board. Recommendation for appointment, letters of interest and resume. Submitting the following individual for appointment to Mental Health Early Intervention and Development Program Advisory Board. John Timothy Boyer of Bethlehem. Mr. Boyer is being considered for a 3-year term to begin April 19th, 2019 and to end January 23rd, 2022. There's a memo from the Human Service Director and a resume included in your packet. Any questions or comments for that appointment?
So
Okay.
moved.
So move to full council. Thank you. Moving on to Workforce Investment Board of Lehigh Valley, submitting the following individual for appointment to the Workforce Investment Board: Stephen Patterson of Easton. Mr. Patterson is being considered for the position to replace Ellen Kingsley, who resigned. Mr. Patterson's term will begin April 19, 2019, and end June 30th, 2020. This position will represent the business category. There's a letter from Tony Alinelli from the Chamber and a bio from Mr. Stephen Patterson in your packet. Questions or comments for this appointment to the Workforce?
Just a quick comment, since we got a recommendation from Tony Alinelli, I assume that since it's business, it matters.
Ba-bum-bum.
Duly noted.
Need drumsticks now.
Monday nights. Okay. All right, so move to full council. Okay, moving on. We have, okay, so now we're going to the review of personnel requests. And I have a request here from the county executive at the request of Mr. Costura, Director of Corrections. Please consider the following requests to eliminate one correction reentry coordination position and create one correction reentry case manager position. Eliminate the following position of full-time pay grade CS 26-02B and create the following position classification, a case manager, pay grade CS 23-01A. Please find the attached calculations of the financial impact of this request, which is attached in your packet. So it's a net change of negative $10,873. So do I have any questions or comments from the council or the committee? No? Move to full council? Okay. And the second one here is also a personnel request from Mr. Costura, Director of Corrections. Please consider the following request to upgrade one corrections maintenance worker position, full-time RU 19-02D to one correction maintenance HVAC mechanic position, full-time RU 22-02B. Eliminate the following position and create the following position. All right, so we're eliminating a correction maintenance and we are creating a correction maintenance HVAC mechanic. And on the next page, you will see the pay grade difference. There's a net change of $2,317. Any questions or comments on this pay grade change? Okay, move it to full council. So moved. Okay, which brings us to the last item on the agenda. We have a resolution here. It is hereby resolved by the Northampton County Council that one full-time position of clerk specialist, pay grade CS 17-2B, salary $37,955 in the office of County Council will be eliminated effective April 22nd, 2019. It is hereby further resolved by Northampton County Council that one full-time position of deputy clerk to council, pay grade of CE 4D, salary of $52,178 be created in the office of County Council effective April 22nd, 2019. And there is a job description in your packet of the deputy clerk to council. I have also had Linda send, Ms. Zembo send this out to everyone as well as I had her send out all the job descriptions of the jobs that are currently in county council, so everybody could get familiar with it. I also talked to county council, and I asked Linda for a job description of each position, not just a job description like when you hire somebody, but actually a real-time, what duties do they perform daily, what duties do they perform weekly or monthly. And I have a couple notes here I'd like to read off before we get into discussion. And we're missing one of the personnel. Is he coming out? Is Ron coming out for this or not? Can you see if he will? Yeah. Yep. Okay, sure. Well, we'll just carry on. Okay, first of all, at this point, I'd like to point out how important this department is, and I'd like to commend them for all their work and continued compliance with all the time-sensitive dates and accountability that they face on a daily basis. They're the gear that turns county council. I get that, and I've been here for a year and a few months, and I've been paying attention to it. Over the last 9 months, I've been looking at creating a deputy position for county council for the following reasons. First, to create a successful legacy plan for the department and to increase the level of professionalism. Not that it's not a good level of professionalism, but there's always room for improvement. I think by looking ahead, this works as a way to strengthen the department and enhance the ability to serve council. Human Resources did help me draft the position as I studied what other models were being used in other counties, including time at CCAP and other counties, and just discussions with other folks from other counties. And I looked into successor and legacy plans, knowing how important these positions are. I was going to roll this out last year's budget amendments, but at that time I still did not have enough information. When I found out that the current clerical specialist was taking another job in a different department, I thought this would be a great opportunity to reorganize the department, adding a deputy clerk and redistributing some of the duties of the office. I've been in touch with Ms. Zembo, asking her to provide me with a list of all the daily, weekly, and monthly tasks that are performed for each employee of the department. I have shared that information with council. I'm still waiting for a couple more little pieces of information. At that point, I think it's very important to focus on some cross-training, which I know is happening, and I know there is some cross-training, but more so, a formal cross-training plan in the duties of the department. And I'm in no hurry to roll this out. I want council's input and feedback on it, but it's just something that I thought was an important part of what I do, and that's why I'm bringing it to council, or bringing it at least to the committee meeting. So at that point, I'd like to open it up for discussion and comment, or I want to know what the committee feels, and there's most of the council here tonight too. So I think it's very important. This is your department. So attached is the resume for the job description. That person's going to be spending a lot of time, at least for my proposed description. They're going to be doing the meetings, and that way, if something happens, somebody can just pick right up and for God forbid anything happen, but we have to look ahead. We have to look past the curve. So that's one of the reasons why I brought this to the table here. And I thought it was a really good opportunity to do it once I found out that there was an opening. So if you have any discussion on it, now's the time.
I'm not on the committee.
Okay, sure. But I would love to hear what you have to say.
No, I just want to know how this position is going to be filled. Are you going to, an RFP kind of thing, or are you going to look for resumes?
Yes. Yes, we're going to put it out there.
Not an RFP, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But
we're going
you
to
know what I mean, a
we're going to
resume
solicit
and
the position.
advertise.
That's my intent, is to solicit the position.
Because I know at one time we got a stack of resumes, so there will be interest.
Yes. And that's good.
Yeah, if I could just chime in, I just am not sure why it's necessary to have a clerk and a deputy clerk and then one other employee. I think if the department were larger, it might be justified to have somebody with that sort of a title. But I can't see adding another $15,000 to the council budget to create a position that I have never seen a need for. There's traditionally been a pecking order back there. You know, we knew who the clerk was. We knew when Ms. Zembo was, I guess we could say, second in command, so to speak, that she stepped up when Frank wasn't around. And then the third position is typically been a receptionist. I'm just not sure that I see a need for this, given the structure of our staff.
All right. Well, I think the biggest need I see is, just a structured successor plan that's a functional, not just, well, maybe they're cross-trained, maybe they're not. This puts more of that in play, and for the bigger picture, so. But I hear your comments, and I appreciate it.
But I know it is history. When Frank became very ill, Linda, as executive secretary, did an excellent job of stepping in and filling that position.
I've heard that, yes, and we appreciate that, yes.
So I'm not sure that we need a deputy, two like bosses for one person, to supervise one person.
Well, if you read through the job description, the clerk does have, it's the same status. It's. Go ahead. Sure. Okay. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to say I know Mr. McGee had come to me regarding this a bit back and was talking. I know he's done a lot of research on this, and I know between he and Mr. Lott, for example, they're involved in jobs and job descriptions, and so I was listening, and I think some of the questions that have been posed, I ask from my own perspective as well, because I have been around, or was around, and came around again, as to how we do things and why we do things, and as you well know, Home Rule Charter came in 78, 9, and really county council operations was Frank Flisser. I mean, Frank was county council. To this day, I know Frank, and Frank's a dear friend of mine, and I drag him to hockey games now and then. But I know I won't speak for Ms. Zembo. In fact, I'm the one who recommended Ms. Zembo to Frank Flisser way back in the day when he needed a new secretary. But that being said, his teaching, the way council worked was, if you sort of had to watch Frank wasn't necessarily the greatest mentor. He's a great guy, but he didn't necessarily always. Frank had his way, and it was a good way. It worked, and we were all thrilled to have Frank. But what happened? Frank had a stroke. Now, who knew? Who knows? None of us know. And then Ms. Zembo was pressed into service, whether, she had to rely on her wits and what she had learned. How many years had you been with Frank?
About 2.
but you were only there 2 years at that point. We were very fortunate. We were very fortunate that we had Ms. Zembo, and she had the type, she was able to do the job she's done. But when Mr. McGee then mentioned this to me, I said, well, there were a few things that I was concerned about. One is I didn't want anyone to lose a job. We can be very clinical about what we do and how we do things, but I've been in that situation in my life, and I'm not going to be a part of anything where we're pushing somebody out the door because you haven't given me enough reason to say why somebody has to be out the door. On the other hand, I also said to him, as you're looking at this, remember that everything here is at will. I mean, there's no guarantee. There was no guarantee Ms. Zembo was going to get Frank's job. There was no guarantee that Sharon, and I just had a great opportunity. I was speaking with Sharon and spending some time talking to both Sharon and Christine. There's no guarantees. None. Zero. So what do we do? And I know the term succession came up, and I know Bill felt very strongly about succession and training and cross-training. And so there was this idea of a fourth person, but through different discussions and dialogues, I think that was still getting worked out of how that would even work. Because I do understand what you're saying, Mr. Cusick. I don't know how many people we need back there, quite frankly. But then when we found out that Christine would be leaving us, Mr. McGee talked to some people and said, well, I might push this now, and I recommended he get it out to council so everybody had some time to review it and give him their input, because our policy is what 5 people think our policy should be. That's council policy. And the only precedent is that we have no precedent. And that's one of Frank's sayings, too, as well as mine. When people say, well, our precedent, we can change precedent tomorrow. The only precedent is home rule charter. So, I mean, we're in charge of our own house. I saw this job in a sense of somebody who could come in maybe even on a little different tact in the sense of research. When I was here the first time around, and Mrs. Ferraro has perspective on this as well, it was a different time, different things worked differently. Things have gotten more complicated. And honestly, to be honest with you, I think council has sort of backed off a bit. Administrations have become much more powerful. I mean, we get things, and we pretty much have to accept what we're getting. I mean, we can do some legwork, but I think, frankly, we've fallen behind in some ways, and maybe we could use somebody who could do some research. We might say, hey, you know what? Could you research a couple counties on this? Because we're being told we need to do A, B, and C. And I know, like, for example, Mr. Cusick, you're involved with CCAP, so you have a lot of knowledge you bring to the table, but not everybody does. And, I mean, I can't throw that on Linda when she's trying to put together the day-to-day operations, and I don't know if a clerical person would do that. So I believe if we're going to have co-equal branches of government, not that I'm looking that we need to have 6 or 7 employees back there, but I think we have to look at the type of employees we have and who's going to be doing what. So those were some of the thoughts I had and conditions I had. I didn't want to see any of our good people pushed out the door or demoted, and that was not going to be the case as far as I was concerned. So I think it's a good idea for people to mull this over and see if they have what's pro and con. I think you could probably point to some pros and certainly a few cons maybe that you'll have. But I just wanted to make my position on this very clear. And like I said, I think it was really done now because Christine is, and by the way, I just want to throw this in. I think Public Works is getting one heck of a person. Mike is getting a fantastic individual in Christine as his executive secretary. No question about it. One of the nicest people I've ever met. So that's it. That's all I have to say. I myself am interested in how the body as a whole feels.
And in no way do I want to disrupt anything that's going on. Those are the gears that turn, what everything happens out here. But I just think it's important to look at the future, look ahead, look past the curve, and make sure that we're providing what we need for the bigger picture.
I was on the fence on, I think, track 1 before. Actually, I think he made a very good case for the position, in my view. I'm going to look it over some more, but I'd have to say that I'm leaning towards it based on.
Yeah, and I come into this, Matt, I mean, honestly, this was brought to me. And I thought, well, and then I thought back over the years. Do we need and I know the administration's working on cross-training, and cross-training here has been sort of what we do. I think people do as much as they can. Linda does as much as she can, Sharon does. We never really had to formalize it, what Mr. Cusick said. We sort of had this process of osmosis. And depending on how good you were at osmosis, you'd be better trained or not. Maybe we need to formalize it a bit. But your point about the operation, Bill said not wanting to screw up the operation. My grandparents were farmers. I remember my one grandfather always had a great phrase, which I loved, which was, any jackass can kick down a barn door, but it takes a carpenter to build it. I said to Bill early on, if you get four people to agree with you, you can create anything you want. Then what do you do the next day? What if the whole place is in turmoil? I mean, we have an operation to run here. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just, can I do this? Yeah, get 4 people to agree with you, you can do just about anything you want. We can go get some money from the Treasury if we get 4 people, or 6 if he vetoes. But I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, what happens the following day? What happens? What's the result of your action? So I mean, my concern has been from day one when I've heard this is, I don't want to disrupt our operation. If we do anything at all, I want it to see somehow as an improvement, or somehow as making things work smoother for everybody. If I don't think that's going to happen, I couldn't support it. But it has nothing to, it has no personalities. I'm not going to get into personalities, whether somebody likes somebody or not. I've had enough jobs in my life where it's like, look, deal with it. And I've talked to Ms. Zembo and others, and she knows how I feel. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have a job to do. We're all at will. Any one of us can be told to leave by the voters. Mr. Cusick's thinking about that this year. So the thing is, so you never know. I mean, but when we're here, we have a job to do. So that's it. That's all I have to say. I can think about it.
Can I
I'm
talk
done.
now? Okay.
You can do whatever you want.
Thanks. I have no
I'm not the
farmer
chairman, he
analogies. I'm sorry. I think we've been blessed to have excellent staff. I think every organization that I belong to, every board I belong to, every place I've ever worked has had a succession plan. And I think notwithstanding history, I think everybody looks to do that, whether it's in a matrix form, a training form, whatever. So I think, again, we have great staff, but with Christine's departure, it gives us an opportunity to take a look at this, and I fully support this.
Mr. Warner?
I'm going to disagree a little bit on this thing because I'm sorry. Thanks, John. I'm looking at the job descriptions and what we need as a county versus the job demands versus the succession. Okay, we have 3 people back there. We're going to put in a clerk in a position, a deputy clerk in a position that's going to be trained by our current clerk, and then there's going to be she's going to take over and get a $15,000 bump. Okay. And isn't that correct?
Yeah. The pay is different than
Yes.
what the executive secretary makes.
Well,
yes.
Just my feeling is
And I
that,
think that's an educational piece, is what you're.
well, their duties
paying.
I believe their duties are going to overlap. I believe what's going to happen is you've got a high-paid position that does a lot of things that the other position might do. I'll give you my opinion, not trying to be negative about it, but this came from other counties, you said, home rule type charter counties? Mm-hmm. And how big were their staffs in the council? 3. Same thing.
Mm-hmm. That clerk, deputy clerk, and then a secretarial clerk.
Okay, and the job descriptions that you have shown here that came out of HR, the same type that you saw?
Similar, yeah. Yeah, it's tweaked a little bit. Yeah, there was a couple. There's a couple of deputies. One in particular.
I mean, I totally agree. We have to train people for when someone leaves or departs. It's not a problem. I just don't know if this is the right way to do it. That's my honest opinion.
Sure.
I think that's something that should be discussed further, and especially with the girls in the office. I think it's only fair that it be reviewed how this was going to be handled. You have one that's leaving who didn't know about this, maybe, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so in all fairness, she really never had a
Yeah,
chance.
I held on to this for a couple of months and did my research before
Yeah.
I just put things out there.
Okay, and I'm not saying
I saw
it's...
an opportunity.
and
and
you're
I-
supposed to do that. That's fine. That's
Yeah, I didn't want to stir the pot without, knowing I was going to move on it. And then at that time, I let the appropriate people know.
Well, I'm just going to
And
tell
I'm
you...
not in any.
No, you're not in a hurry,
any
you said.
hurry.
Okay.
We're gonna do this.
I would
we're gonna
really
do it
like
right.
to have the chance to discuss and review this further and find out what overlaps and what doesn't overlap and where the money in the budget falls in for this, because I think there's a lot of loose ends here that need to be talked about. Just my opinion. Thank you.
If I'm mistaken, you're not asking to put this on the agenda for this meeting?
No.
No.
It's not rolling tomorrow. No.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
No.
It's on the agenda.
No, we're not putting it on.
Are
the
you
agenda
not?
for tomorrow. Well, I'm telling them not to.
It was on the agenda. Okay. So we have time to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, yes, you need time.
Maybe a budget.
Yeah, budget, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And I will take that under consideration, and we will, will be further discussion with the staff and
If I could just make a suggestion, this might be something to do during budget time when we review positions, add and subtract. Typically, that's the window where something like this could be discussed and put forward.
And on that point, I did see an opportunity where somebody was leaving, and also I was going to bring it up in front of budget at that time, but I don't think it was quite ready yet. So, but now, of course, there's going to be a need for a third person, or at least somebody to help, with the duty. So, anyone else? Okay. I guess I would like to, look into this more, but anyway, so that's where we'll leave it. How's that? All right.
Your game.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Are you adjourning?
If nobody else has anything, then.
Do we need 5 minutes, council, before we go into, should we, straight in? Okay, we'll go straight in. Okay, we'll convene the Finance
We can do that
Committee
tomorrow.
immediately. First things first, Finance Committee, courtesy of the floor. Anyone want to speak this afternoon? No? Okay. First on the list is a review of the 2019 budget amendment, which I believe has money in it from our governor for the purchase of, adding it to the budget for the purchase of equipment, correct? 300 and, is that how that? That's in the current budget, okay. Are there any questions or concerns, discussion?
Just one quick note, I would just say that this looks very similar to the budget amendment. I think it's within $100,000 of the one that I proposed back in December. So I'm not surprised to see it come up at this time. There is, I believe, the one line here for equipment is federal money.
Yeah.
I am unaware of any state funding that there's been a proposal, but we don't really know because the state's budget hasn't been passed. So I guess my question is, are we better off waiting until after the state passes its budget so we know what exactly we're going to
Well, we're
receive?
still going to need the voting equipment. One of the reasons for doing this at this time is, one, we don't know when the state's going to adopt their budget. Two, we were able to negotiate, and to that point, if you were to see where we started off on our negotiations and where we wound up, these two folks in the corner here got beaten up quite frequently and selectively, to that matter, because as different prices were coming back and forth, I hasten to tell you that we just took the prices we liked and went back to them and told them, well, here's what we need. Part of this is that the shipping costs, we're expecting an increase coming up in the after May. So one of the reasons here was to take advantage of what the shipping costs are now. It's a substantial savings in that regard, as well as to make sure that we had what we needed in place. If the state government comes forward with any additional funding, we can, essentially have a budget amendment to add that money in.
Yeah, and
So
I would just add, I mean, this was a huge topic of discussion at the last CCAP meeting, and what the governor is proposing is woefully insufficient
It really
to
is.
cover the needs of the county. And I think one of the other concerns is that he's proposing having an appropriation over a 5-year period, which would even extend beyond his term, which is just absurd, ridiculous. So there's no guarantee that we'll receive any money beyond what would pass in this year's budget. So I understand, yes, we have a need. We've got to get these up and running.
And this also gives us an opportunity. One of the things that we're working with the vendor on is to make sure that we have an opportunity with our primary coming up to let the voters know what's next. So to that extent, we want to make sure that for people who are showing up to vote, they will have the clearest understanding, and we are going to provide literature at the polling places so that people know this is what's next. And I think that's going to be a serious question in every county. Okay, we're voting on this election. What are we voting on next? We have an opportunity to educate people at a cursory level, but at least they'll see there'll be much less anxiety here.
Okay. And my other question is more of an accounting one. Will we need to create an additional line item for the state funding, because this is one that's strictly federal?
So we anticipate getting more federal money this year because the HAVA grant was actually turned in. So we anticipate getting more money this year. We will have another revenue line item that goes in that will account and track the purchases or whatever money we get from the state. So basically, we already get state revenue in. It would just be another line item. And because it would probably be a significant amount of money, we would have to amend the budget at that time when we accept the money. So you would see that in the first or second budget amendment of the second or third now, because this is like a supplemental budget amendment.
Yeah, one of the other questions that was up in the air was, is the state, how will they reimburse us? Will this be first come, first serve? Will it be equal amount? From the last I heard, that still hadn't been decided.
Well, if it's equal amounts or first come, first serve, because we already have expenses for the machine, if it's first come, first serve, we're in really good shape, I think, because we might be the first. So.
Well, hopefully the budget will pass June 30th, and at that point we need to be ready to go to receive whatever reimbursement is available. So my hope is that should we pass this and move forward, that it'll put us in a position to recoup whatever state dollars are available as soon as possible.
I share your hope that the budget passes on time.
So if I may follow with that same concern, I guess, is could we be out of the money if we had purchased it before they finalize that we have to get it? So we buy it now, and we're getting it prior to they say, the program starts. We're not eligible to collect that money because it's, they're saying if you buy one now.
This is a you.
Well, I think we have the safety and security of Philadelphia having already gone to purchase theirs as well, and I don't imagine that Philadelphia would vote for anything that would hurt their interests in that regard. And I don't think that would be something that anyone would move forward on. So, and there are a number of other there are a number of other counties that are in that situation. Several counties that are not home rule charter went through to buy their machines early because they would not be eligible because they're election commission. They themselves are elections commissioners, and the selection process becomes a little bit muddier there. And CCAP and a number of other organizations dealt with that so that they wouldn't be voting in a year that they were on the ballot or having a substitute vote in their place. So there are other counties as well that have already adopted their machines. So I don't imagine for the number of counties that have been proactive that they would
Be excluded
at all.
Any other, Ron?
We have the 1-year warranty.
Yes.
And from at point of delivery. Is there as far as beyond that?
Yeah, we have a 10-year program, and that was one of the things that the state as well. The state and through CoStars had initially asked everyone to be looking at further out, that this would not just be where we are today. And one of the problems that we've had with our current company has been changing and shifting numbers, and we wanted to lock down, and that was the only way, because quite frankly, the reality of this whole situation, and certainly one of the things that we discussed before the Elections Commission, and you were all received that PowerPoint, is that a lot of these things look good on paper in the first year, but it's by the 10th year that you know what really your costs are, and some of them were extreme, to be sure that there were a lot more costs, whether it was the sheer volume of paper. Most of the companies were about the same in their software costs and their maintenance expenses.
So let's say if I could continue, Mr. Chairman.
Go.
Let's say we're 3 years in and we notice there's a problem. Do we have any kind of limited? I know it's 1 year. It's like, let's say a car, 1 year, boom. Is there anything we have
Some
to
sort of
protect?
problem, as much as
with the machines.
we're
Beyond the 1 year,
we're actually
or we just have to pay whatever it is?
no, we actually have a program for every 2 years. Everything will be essentially maintained, dealt with, and the elements will be fixed under that contract.
Okay, that was it.
No, it's not that, all of a sudden the screens stop working.
Okay.
One of the outside benefits of dealing with the SNS is they are in presently 64 out of 67 counties in Pennsylvania under their regular voting equipment. They have a footprint in both Philadelphia and New York. They have all of Delaware. They're a company that's going to be around, unlike AVS that disappeared on us, and that's certainly a lesson you learn when you pick the brightest, shiniest toy out there, and it winds up not being an elections company. This is an elections company. So it helps that they will be around and they will be supporting the machine.
I thought it was.
That's part of the
I thought it was a
tenure.
good system. I mean, what sells me is the judges of election. I mean, they're the people that's what they think,
Well,
and they seem to really want
And
this.
to that extent, the funnier or the most ironic part of this is everyone our judges of elections were not just interested in this machine, but they all kind of felt bad, like, this looks like it's going to be the most expensive, but we really like this one. And here it turns out to be the least expensive, and we're going to be paying less than Lehigh County for their machines.
Oh.
So,
Good. Take that, Lehigh County. Oh, by the way, I want to applaud before I leave, I do want to applaud Mr. Cusick's clairvoyance. You could have been the great Karnak of council.
Clairvoyance. Are you done giving accolades?
Well, I am finished.
Because I'd like
hopefully
Ms.
Mr.
Vargo
Cusick's clairvoyance didn't give ESNS the idea that they can ask for that much money.
Thank you for the accolades, Ron. No, Ms. Vargo Hefner.
Thank you. I don't know if I asked this before, but if and when this gets approved, do you have a plan for rollout? Like,
Yes.
what's the timeline?
Yeah, well, we will. One of the reasons that we're looking to approve is we'll be taking delivery on these in May, right after our election. So we're going to have our machines sequestered in one portion of the warehouse, and then these machines will be coming in afterwards. By doing this in May, we save a little over $20,000 in shipping costs, and it's serious money when we can do that.
Further questions?
Is there any plan for training, or then again, what's further in the timeline? Training of the
We'll be
elections folks? Or?
We'll be training the elections folks. Our own staff will be trained to make sure that they understand all of the new elements of this. Because as different than anything else, we will not be printing out that big piece of paper that goes in the machines presently. So our own staff will be able to work on these machines directly. There will be no third-party person to make our ballots. They'll be made in-house, and the cards will be put into the machines to make them display the ballot as they are. We have ESNS here in a bit that can show you how it votes and what it looks like. We'll be able to do that work here without engaging someone else. So that's something that will be the first element of this. We do plan on, as we've done in the past, and Mr. McClure has done a good job in keeping both Ken and I around, because we're responsible for the last 2 rollouts of new machines. So in the last 50 years, the new machines that have been rolled out have been done by myself and Ken Kraft. So unfortunately, we have experience rolling out new machines. So we'll be going out to senior centers. We'll be getting to all of our senior locations so that the folks will see them, and we'll make sure that one is available here so that people coming to the courthouse can also preview and try the machine.
And are there any other training costs for the folks that actually have to implement it at each site, or like what's the plan to do
we'll
that?
be training all of the judges, everyone. We do that every year anyway, because it's the reality
that's
is
built
people,
into-
yes, people do this once every 6 months. To remember all the sequences of what you need to do every 6 months is a little unfair. So every year we have training just in the machines that we have now, and we'll continue doing that.
Thank you.
John.
Just as a follow-up, I just thought of this based on a previous question. At one point, we used to contract delivery to the polling places.
Yes.
Will our public works staff continue to handle it under the new machine? And
These
are they capable?
These are more compact. They are lighter than the machines that we have presently, and they will be very easily able to move these in the same. That's one of the things that we did like about these from a logistics standpoint. It's the same effort that we had to do before with something lighter and smaller. So it will be easier than it had been. And one of the elements that we are moving forward with here for our judges of election, something that's new, is they're going to have to bring paper back. So we also have something the equivalent of rolling luggage that is custom made to fit the containers so that no one will ever come in contact with our ballots. The paper that you'll see someone from ES&S, I'm not sure if it's going to be Joe or Chris, put in will have to come back. There'll have to be a chain of custody at the end of the day. And one of the elements with this one, compared to all the other systems, is this is sealed. So no one comes in contact with the actual paper.
Thank you.
Further questions? I have a question, but I'm not, by us effectively moving this forward for council tomorrow, are we saying that, are we making an agreement to purchase the equipment?
No, there's a separate resolution.
I'm just asking because there's a specific funding. We're talking about buying them in May.
Yes.
You're acting as if all the machines are already done. The deal has been done.
Well, you'll at the same meeting, you'll also be voting on a resolution to accept those machines. So
Okay, because
it's a separate. It
is separate, but it's also, I mean, it's also part of the deal. I get it. Okay.
Well, yeah, we couldn't.
You couldn't
would
do it
love,
without
I would love to just hand you the resolution and go from there, but you got to fund it.
Yeah, I know.
Mrs. Anderson is very, very serious about having the funding mechanism before she puts anything through.
I just have one comment about ES&S, and I'm going to leave it alone until tomorrow night. There's a minimum training requirement that's done through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah.
And they put that, they kind of have the guidelines for what is to be done with each program. And we don't pay for this. It says, according to what I'm seeing, is they do all the training.
Yeah.
So to answer Ms. Vargo Hefter's question, she said, is there a cost involved? There shouldn't be any cost involved, correct?
No, they've been dedicated to making sure this is all rolled out.
Okay, because I have quite a list here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on that? We'll move that forward tomorrow night.
All right. If I may, ES&S is here if you wanted to see the machine.
Why don't, wait till we get to the item, if you don't mind.
The
Election Systems and Software Article 13 contract.
all right.
Because it won't take long to do the transfers in the foundation, I can tell you that. If you don't mind. Okay. Oh, how many counties did you say currently with ESS? How many counties did you say with ESS?
64 out of 67.
You said 64 out of 67?
That's what he said.
No.
45.
45?
sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I heard wrong. He did
Okay.
say 65.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was for clarification. I'm sorry. Okay, moving along. Okay. The review of a donation by the Friends of Gracedale Foundation. Someone want to do the whereas and now therefore, or shall I do it? That's
Want
for
me to
tomorrow.
say it, or
Do you want to know what it is for, though? Right.
It's for a shuffleboard
It's for
table.
a shuffleboard table for the Cracker Barrel room. Yes.
You can read it for me tomorrow. How's that?
Okay. If you're okay with it, we'll move that forward.
So
For $1,000.
Second.
I want to thank the Friends of Gracedale Foundation for doing that. As Jen knows, they've already donated $7,000 plus to Gracedale Help. And I'm sure the shuffleboard was really needed, okay? Okay, next thing. Contingency transfer to Recovery Revolution. This has been discussed quite a bit. Matt?
Yeah, and actually, so at least from my point, I'm going to pull it. I spoke to Sue and the administration, and a couple things. One, that Recovery Revolution does have a meeting with the state and the county later this month to make sure they're in compliance and eligible for funding. So definitely, at least for then, going to pull it and make sure they're in compliance. And the administration did, confirm that if they are in compliance, they need more funding, that they would fund it. So.
Okay. Any questions on that? That's a
Comment?
go.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it was a great idea that Matt proposed. That's a good way to use your tools. And, as somebody new to council, I don't, know all these tools that we can use. I thought it was a great idea. But, I just want to point out, when they came up here to present, I think there was a different story. There was more stories than one story. Yeah. And I really think that the county and the administration need to get to the bottom of this, because I think there's more to the story than what we heard. So I'm going to leave it at that.
I believe Mr. Barron had addressed some of that, correct?
Well, I think it's a different issue.
It's a different issue, but he has the ability to check on the finances.
Well, if I may, and actually this is something that I thought about, is that I'm not sure if it's appropriate or not but with them needing more funding, is it something that our controller could or look at to validate, how they spent the money and what they're eligible for? I don't know if that's necessarily completely in the purview of what our controller could do, or.
Well, Steve, want to address that?
Someone who might know.
Since you're halfway up here.
In the Home Rule Charter and in our contracts, it says that records must be kept for at least 7 years, and that the controller can audit subrecipients of funds, which Recovery Revolutions would be one.
Okay.
Answers your question.
All right. I guess we ask for clarification or procedure later, but maybe draw something up to have that looked at from them.
We do that for the meeting. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Review of Article 13 contracts. Now we go to election systems and software. Mr. Dertinger, you had said you would like to have someone speak.
I know that not everyone had an opportunity to see this machine or to see what we're going to be going from to. So I give you Christine and Joe from ESNS.
Christine and Joe.
Hi, thank you for having us here today. My name's Christine Valeriano with ESNS. Oh, sure. It's V as in Victor, ALERIANO. Last name? McIntyre, MCINTYRE.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Now that screen I could see, okay? Normally I can't see.
Well, thank you for having us here today. Just a little bit about ESNS. We've been in the election business for over 40 years, and we're currently in 43 states. With us today, we have our full-face voting machine. It's called the XL, extra large. It is certified in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and even though it looks like a touchscreen voting machine, it's certified as a paper-based system. It's called a ballot marking device. The voters are marking their selections on the face of the machine, and then where Joe's hand, that's actually the tabulator. So Joe's going to be my voter today, and he's going to simulate what a voter does. So when the voter comes in on election day and you sign in the poll book, the board worker is going to give the voter a voter card. It's a blank card. It's blank. So Joe's going to come up to the voting machine and insert his voter card. And you'll notice on the front of the screen we have several different languages. We can go up to 16 languages. I believe in your county you currently have 2. I believe it's English and Spanish. On our screen we have Punjabi, Gujarati, Hindi, English, and Spanish. So Joe's going to choose English. And you'll see your contesting candidates are in front of you on the screen.
Now I can't see.
Can you see?
Is there a
Can you go
certain
like
way you
this?
have to put that paper in? I saw there was a corner
Yeah,
on
great
it.
question. So we always say corner cut to the right, and that's a part of our training because there are no consumables with the voting machine, so you don't have to worry about the board workers having to change out any ink cartridges. So the ballot, when it's marking it, it fuses to the front side of that paper. So that's why we say corner cut to the right, so you make sure the voter's inserting the paper correctly. Okay? So the voter card is inside the machine. Yeah?
It will not, we'll show you that after.
Yeah, it will not accept your card. So Joe, I'm going to let you vote the voting machine and explain what you're doing since you're in front of it.
Well, obviously, you would have a Pennsylvania ballot. You wouldn't be voting for Batman or Superman like we have on here. But all the voter does is this is what the administrators
Aquaman.
spoke about. Right now, you're getting the big paper ballots printed up, and they're like $100 a pop, I think. So they, if you get 2 per machine, you're paying a lot of money. Paper ballot. When this is coded, programmed, it programs the ballot for you in the software. So once you load everything up, the voter puts their ballot in, and they're just going to touch the screen to cast their votes. If they want to do a write-in vote, for instance, they'll come over here to the write-in, and it comes up with a write-in keyboard, so they would spell out whoever they're going to vote for.
Oh, it's a QWERTY keyboard.
So they just type in the name and say accept it, and the name now prints on the ballot here. So if it said John Doe, that would say John Doe right on the ballot, which you cannot see. We have, on this ballot, we have public questions or proposals at the bottom. We do have the ability to hit large text, and it will pop it up so you can view the entire proposal in a very large text. If you turn to the ballot, obviously you say no because it's a proposal. That's what voters do. Every machine is audio equipped. It's automatically audio. It's playing audio right now in whatever language I selected. So if I was a visually impaired voter, couldn't see, I would put on the headphones and the poll worker hands them the audio device. Now we use the ADA community to design this for us because they said the little audio handsets keep falling through people's legs if they're in a wheelchair. Don't see them on the ground and can't find them. So we designed it ergonomically. They asked for ergonomic handle. It's larger so it sits right on the voter's lap. We also, recommendation, they asked if we could put walls around the buttons. Match the shape of the button. Because on the old handsets, they move their fingers across and they're hitting the button. Now the machine goes someplace and they don't even know what they're doing at that point. So this prevents them from accidentally pushing the button. They have to pick their hand up and go inside to do it. But this is what they use to navigate through the entire ballot. They vote using this device if they need to.
Question.
Yes,
if I
sir.
may. Showed how you increased the size when you had, but you can do that for the actual voting face itself,
I
correct?
can, and that's what I'm going to show you now. A couple of different things. For instance, what you just said, I can't see this. But we have buttons up here for text size. I can increase it to large text, and it will go contest by contest on the screen. So I can go one contest, next contest, next contest. Oops, didn't vote it. And I hit it first. I touch it. I can vote right on this screen and go through the entire ballot like a paginating system does. So you've got real big print that the voters can see. I can take that back at any point. I can go to my regular ballot, get my full ballot again. I don't lose any votes that I might have put on the paginating system. Another visually impaired, macular degeneration. They have a real hard time with a white screen, black print. So we can change the contrast. They can change the contrast. While they're standing in the voting booth, we can change it to a white print on a black background. So now that they can see very, very easily with no help from the poll worker. Other than some instructions when you're teaching them about the machine, all they need to do is go to the contrast, change it, and they can go back to the regular ballot, but it's very quick. It's the wrong language. I can understand English, but I can't read it. So I can change my language and say, let's go to Spanish. The entire ballot right now, so if I went back to my large text, you're going to see okay, it is in Spanish up there, but if I go to my text size, make it large, everything now in Spanish, the entire ballot as I go through it. Buttons down here that tell them what to do. Likewise, when they change language, it's now playing a different audio. Spanish or Gujarati or Hindi or Punjabi, whatever they might have selected. So they have the ability, without any interference or help from a poll worker. I did, now I'm back to English. So you can do a whole lot with this, but that's how that works with voters, and the blind voter just as easily can vote using the handheld device. This is what Christine's talking about. It is really a paper system. It's certified as a paper system. What Christine called the ballot marking device, and she has a great term I always like. She said it takes the pencil out of the voter's hand because you can't overvote a contest. If it's a vote for one, I can change votes, automatically deselects the person I want. So if it's a vote for multiple people, like down here, it's going to tell me you made too many selections. It'll come up with a message to say, oops, you made too many selections, you voted for more than the maximum number allowed. And it tells you to deselect one candidate. Now I can do it. That's the whole thing. Voters finish, they say, print my card, telling you, hey, you're ready to print your ballot. To make changes, go back to the ballot and make your changes. Otherwise, where the paper system comes in, this screen is nothing anymore other than it was used to print this. And on this piece of paper, it's got all the contests listed and all the candidates I selected or didn't select. So if I vote for two and I voted for one, I have the candidate's name, and then it'll say no selection made underneath it for the second candidate. So I can look at this and go, that's correct. Cast my ballot. Now the voter doesn't get that piece of paper. It's in a locked box back here. That was tallied. We just counted that piece of paper. And we took an image of it. So the image is stored in here, and I unlocked this door just so I can get to it to show you. The image is in the machine. It's on the stick. We've got the actual paper ballot that was just counted. We can audit the entire election. We can audit every ballot. The piece of paper is not tied back to an individual voter. It's a blank piece of paper. It doesn't know who you are. Put it in. It's just voting. It's not numbered. Nothing about other than. So in the event of a recount, you've got the candidate names that were selected on that piece of paper. That's it in a nutshell.
Question again. Sorry.
Sure.
May say I'm going to answer that before you ask it. But you said it's correct. Paper was there. I look at it. I say everything's right. And you press correct. What if you had pressed not correct? Does it feed the paper back up, or what happens to that paper?
Well, no. If I said not correct, it would return to the ballot. I can make changes to the ballot and then go back to that.
But the paper already went down. You said
So you're saying, so what happens is, because it's a paper-based system,
Yeah.
the law in the Commonwealth is the voters allowed 3 opportunities.
Okay.
So when Joe marks his ballot and it prints out and it doesn't look correct, I can say, oh, no, I forgot to vote for a contest. What happens is Joe will press quit on the screen.
Right.
And it says to the voter, are you sure you want to cancel your ballot? And Joe will press quit. And what's going to happen, it's going to have a warning that comes up, which he'll show you. And it basically locks the system until a board worker comes over. Okay. And what the reason for that is so the voter card does not get returned to the voter and they leave and they don't realize their vote's not cast. So what happens is the board worker comes over and the voter says, I made a mistake, I need to get another voter card. So they escort the voter back over to the check-in table and then they're given another voter card.
Here's what the message says. It says your ballot will be canceled with no votes cast. Return to voting, select return. Now I've already printed my card and I go,
Yeah.
I made a mistake. I can say I want to quit voting, and it's going to say your voting session has been canceled. So what happens at this point? According to Title 19, I'm in New Jersey, according to Pennsylvania election law, you're entitled to 3 paper ballots. Whether it's color in the ovals, whatever the paper ballot is, you can get 3 paper ballots. Well, I have to be able to give you back 2, and they have to check it in the poll book that you already had 2, your last one. So for me to do that, what Christine said, you make sure they're not going to walk out with this piece of paper. So we can track why this ballot being rejected. Why do you want to cancel it? It's
That's what your election worker is going to come over and do. So I'm sorry, I'm a Murphy.
No, it's great.
If it can go wrong, I know it'll go wrong. That's been my life.
You're like, oh,
so
yeah,
the thing is, my only concern is this. You mentioned law. Now, I've decided, I'm looking at it, and that doesn't have my name on or anything.
Right.
But I'm standing there. It's not what I want. Now, an election worker is going to come over. Now, they know it's me, and they know that paper, so they're going to know exactly who I voted for. And if I say it's a mistake.
Or, and in this system,
Yeah.
there are checkbox options. For instance, there's options where you don't even get any of these buttons up top because some counties said, no, we don't want them to have large text. We don't want them to change language. We don't want the voter to do any of that. But even in here, to cancel a vote, you don't have to have poll workers come in. Our machine is set up for the poll workers to come in because we want to track why they abandoned the ballot or why they need it back. That can all be turned off. So when they say quit voting, it'll come, there's a button that says eject. It'll just eject the ballot.
So all that is set up ahead of time.
So
You sit down with the elections office.
I mean, we have election people here.
Right.
And I know they could say, boy, I tell you, I've seen everything. And on voting day, you see everything.
So right now, like when you have fleeing voters on your voting machine, they forget to press the cast vote button. Sometimes they'll walk out. So basically, that's what this is doing. So you have the option to keep track. Was it a fleeing voter? Was it the wrong ballot? But to put your mind at ease, we've had this voting machine in Gloucester County, New Jersey, Warren County, New Jersey, Middlesex County, Gloucester County, and they have not had voters cancel the ballot. They're so used to changing their mind on the screen if they do, that when they're ready to print their ballot, they're ready to go.
And I saw your system before, and I liked it, and I'm glad, but I'm just saying, I'm going by the thing of, I know it's like your vote, it's private. If somebody's coming over, and that may never happen, but if it did, are we violating any kind of law by having an election worker come up to you and go, oh, okay, let me take your paper out. I know exactly who you voted for.
Oh,
Well,
so
here's what's going to happen, though, when they do. For instance, you do not have to have a poll worker come in and put in that password. That's an option in the system. Poll worker intervention, yes, we said yes.
Okay.
So we require it so that we can track this. If we say no, you're not going to be able to track what the issue was and the statistics. But when they do, and it says this is what they did, and I say continue, ballot. This gets folded in half and it's taken back to the poll worker and marked as a spoiled ballot according to law.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I'm just trying to.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm done.
Right,
That was my
it will
question.
just kick it back, and we normally say fold it in half, they'll mark spoiled on it and stick it in a spoiled ballot envelope. Now they issue your second piece of paper.
You have up to three.
But three strikes, you're out.
Three strikes, right, that's the law.
Okay.
So you can have up to 3 ballots.
Ms. Fargo Hefner, then Mr. McGee.
I have two questions. So the first is, on that paper in your hand, there's a little bit of a barcode-looking thing, and this is probably redundant, but people have asked about that, and they have concerns about that being hacked. So can you speak to what the barcode is for?
Sure, the barcode is the candidates that you've selected and the contest. So it's got the name of the contest barcoded with the candidate selection on there. If there's no selection, it's selection, but that's what this is. So barcode technology today, I mean, it's used even coloring the ovals, where it's a hand-marked paper ballot, it uses barcodes. The timing marks all the way around the machine are your XY coordinates telling it where the voting position is. So even that's a barcode. It has to read that so it knows your coordinates, where every candidate position is. Medication, everything is barcoded today. So that's what that is, though. And when it goes through here, it's reading that barcode.
But it's contextual only to that machine. It's not it's not on the internet. It's right here.
no, it's standalone.
Thank you. That's because that's what people's concern is. Who's going to hack this machine, or is all these
And,
things going to get distorted or changed?
And what
so
I
that's
should
my
have, I'm sorry, what I should have mentioned in the beginning is with security. ES&S, we have a relationship with Homeland Security, FBI. They do penetration testing to our voting machines. Also, in Pennsylvania, they talk about risk limiting audits to make sure with the paper ballot that exactly what you're saying, how can you tell it's not hacked? So after the elections, the jurisdictions are going to be required to do risk-limiting audits to take a percentage of the paper ballots and recount them to make sure that the totals match from Election Day. So there's all these checks and balances that we have in place.
Okay.
Mr.
Am I-
McGee. Oh,
So I'm
sorry.
sorry, I had a
Go ahead.
second question
Go ahead.
that's a little different. So you talked about some of the limitations that you adapt to, but what about if someone has a physical disability or someone's got Parkinson's and they have they can't feed the machine properly? Are they allowed to have an assistant with them, or how much latitude do you give someone to assist with this machine before it's?
That's the law.
Okay, because I could see somebody with tremors not being able to feed that properly. And thank you.
And one thing we did not mention with the audio, you're speaking of limitations, is there is 2 devices on the front to connect. One is for the headphone, the other is for a sip and puff or a paddle. So if somebody had a sip and puff device that could be plugged in, they can still vote using
Wow.
that machine.
Mr. McGee.
I just wanted to comment on Mr. Heckman's question on if they spoiled the ballot, and I actually watched you fold your ballot in half, and then so maybe there should be some education where if you want to make sure you fold it in half and you put it in the spoiled ballot envelope, maybe they could even do that themselves, to avoid somebody seeing what was printed on their ballot.
And jurisdictions, some of them take it a step further, and we'll sit down with you to discuss this. They'll have
So there
a Sharpie.
are some procedures
Yeah,
with
they'll
that.
have a black Sharpie at the table, so they'll say to the voter, put a line through your selections,
Okay.
write spoiled on it. They fold it in half, so this way they feel comfortable too when they walk away that somebody can't go in the envelope to see how they voted.
Okay. And then also, when you change the settings, if that's an option, and if we take care of that option, does it automatically default to the normal settings when the next voter comes up? They don't have to go up there and change it to English or Spanish or.
Nope.
So it automatically, when that vote is cast, then it clears it for the next voter to come up to a regular defaulted screen.
Correct.
To show you that, if you like, but yes, it does. If
Oh,
you're
no,
voting
it's just
in
a question.
Spanish or Hindi, once that voter's finished and the next voter puts a card in, it goes to English.
John?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I've seen this machine multiple times now, and I'm impressed with it, but I still had a couple of questions as far as the purchase. I assume that we're going to get a curtain that will come with.
Oh, great question. Yeah, there's the curtain in the back of the unit, but we didn't put it up because it'll.
I understand, but I wanted to know if that was part
Yes,
of
it
the
comes with
contract,
it.
or is that something we have to buy in
For
addition
$3 million, you
to?
get the
No, it
current.
comes with the machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Our,
Good question.
what we have listed is the first year requirements that we would need to conduct the elections for these. It also includes the bags that we were talking about. We have everything, paper.
I've bought some expensive curtains, so I'm just
That's for your
okay.
house. That wasn't for you.
Next, the next one is all of us have been at a cashier and watched them fumble with the ink cartridge or the putting the paper in, and I think with the ink cartridge, what if it starts to run low on ink during the election? Is that something the poll worker can take care of, or how is that handled?
So this machine doesn't have any consumables, so there's not an ink cartridge to the machine.
I'm going to open it up for you in the printer. It's thermal, there's absolutely no ink, so nothing has to get changed.
Yeah.
There's no ink cartridges anywhere.
Wow.
So when we develop the machine, we try to keep it as user-friendly for the board worker as we can. They simply just plug in the unit, power it on, and open the polls. And even for the zero-proof tape that prints out on the top, there's not a spool that they'll have to try to attach it to. They simply just drop in the roll of paper.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I had a couple more. We're spending a lot of money here, so I'm going to get my money's worth. One of the issues I remember last year was straight party voting. So an issue was if I pressed straight party and then maybe I wanted to vote for a third party candidate after I pressed straight party. Will the machine, is it capable of doing that now? So I can press straight party and then I could vote for an independent or a green
Yes.
party after, okay. The absentee ballot system is part of this purchase as well? I think I've asked this, Mr. Dertinger, the absentee ballot.
Yes, there are two setups for that.
Okay.
That absentee ballot scanner will not just be for that, but for the risk limiting audit later on as well. So that when we come back to certify that in Williams Township, the votes matched what they said on election day, we can run that through, and it's something that allows us to do it at a remarkable high speed.
Okay.
So that's not something that'll be, the risk limiting audits are not something that are going to take weeks and months, but rather, hours and days.
Okay, and maybe you can address this as well. Time to close, from the time, the last voter votes until the poll workers get here. Some polling places, they have it down, they're pretty quick. Others, I see them there for an hour. Do you anticipate a reduction in the time it will take our election workers? I mean, granted that there's the travel, but from the time that the last person votes until they walk out the door, will we see a reduction from what we have now?
It should be significantly less.
Okay. And then the last question I have, and we've had this issue, is transmitting our results to the state in a timely manner. Is that something that will be addressed, and what was the issue previously?
There was a fair bit of confusion. One of the elements that we have, both with Vision coming on board as our IT folks, as well as we clarified a lot of what was being told to us before. To transmit to the state, we have to provide, every time we upload to the state, it has to come from our standalone system to go to their standalone system, and the USB can only be used once. If there are any problems in making that transfer, that USB, it still has to be thrown away. You can't use it again. So you wind up in a situation, if you have 12 USB cards, you start worrying about are we going to have enough to finish up the night? And you wind up not transferring as quickly to the state. You wait till you have everything in there so that you have 2 or 3 left at the end. We have that covered. Vision is going to be helping us with that to make sure that there will be someone from the IT staff there to work with our folks so that problem never happens again. So that will be, as well as we're also working on our own website being faster and more responsive. So both of those elements were addressed after the last election when I was here myself till 1 o'clock, making sure that those elements, I saw firsthand what the problem was, and we're taking care of that.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's all I had.
Mr. Heck?
Yeah, I have 3 questions. I remember I saw the presentation back when, so there's a couple of things I just want to clear up. Nowadays with elections, no matter how great it goes next year, somebody's going to win. Nobody has faith in anything anymore. So this is a closed system. There's no Bluetooth. There's no, and I mean, it's tough to. It's tough sometimes to get people to understand. Just because it's a computer, it doesn't mean that somebody can hack it if there's no hackability. And so you have no Bluetooth connectivity whatsoever.
No.
It's a closed system. And so the access by the Election Commission, that's manual if they want to get into it at some point. That's a manual. All right. The other question is, how long, well, no, wait. Will someone be available locally on our first election, or are you going to have any representatives? I mean, I know we're trained, but a question could come up the very first time we use these machines, and they go, oh, my God, we need to talk to somebody from the company. So, I mean, are you available?
Here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the contract, too, that you're going to have support person here for
Excellent.
election
In the
day.
contract.
And the last one I have is, and maybe this is Charles, how long do we have to keep the actual paper, the paper trail? How long do we have
For
to?
federal election, for 2 years, and for a local election, I believe it's 6 months. And we've identified space in our elections warehouse so that we won't be touching the archives building with any of this paper.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Any further questions? I'd like to roll out a few myself now, if everyone has had their chance. Okay, the question I have is, does the machine read the barcode or the name? It reads the barcode. Okay.
But to that extent, just recently, someone from Northampton County was in Warren County. They did a risk limiting audit there because they had believe it or not, a tie election. So they wanted to verify that the barcode was in fact correct, and they went and ballot by ballot identified against the barcode and the human readable ballots cast, and it was 100%, which was a tough moment for them because they had the secretaries of state from both New Jersey and Pennsylvania there, as well as the directors of elections for both states.
And so
it was a really good day for it to have worked.
Okay, a couple other questions. We know that I've attended your workshop, and I've attended other things, and I know that you mentioned that this system is a ballot marking device. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My notes indicate that this is not considered a ballot marking device.
To receive the certification in Pennsylvania, it has to be a ballot marking device. This here is just really an iPad. This doesn't collect any information. It just, like your iPad would, you put the information there. When you press send to go to your printer, the same thing happens here, except for this happens on wire. It doesn't happen.
Okay. Well,
like your iPad would. This is a ballot marking device as defined by both the UPIT blue ribbon panel, as well as the state standards and requirements.
The definition I had of the was different than what you're talking about, but I'll review.
It prints separate. Whatever you have here, once you say print your vote, it doesn't cast your vote. It prints your vote. And then only when you press cast your vote does it read your vote. That's what makes it a ballot marking device.
It reads the barcode.
And it reads the barcode, yes, as all the other.
Okay. I read your literature, and you said this is identical to the machine we had before, quote unquote.
I've never seen that literature that says it's identical.
I'll read the statement. Okay. It says that, quoting from ESS information data sheet, will be identical to county's past system procedures.
Identical, so that we're talking about, I believe, voter familiarity with what they do with a full-face machine, not identical to your buttons or paper overlay or a DRE. It is definitely not a DRE. We think we're just talking about, I think what we're talking about is identical. You've got a full-face ballot that the voter's looking at, as opposed to a paginating system.
Well, I guess the question I was asking was, for $3 million, we should be getting more than what we had last time, correct?
Yeah, and I think this is a point of semantics. They were talking about voter familiarity, the ability for voters to walk in there and not feel like, oh my God, this is so different. This is still a full-face machine, and it operates, as you watch, it operates almost exactly the same, with just one difference, and that big difference being, compliance. It prints a ballot for you that you can see before you cast your ballot, and then it reads your ballot afterwards. That one step that takes place there, or two steps that take place there, is what we're paying $3 million for.
Okay. Well, the other question, and I didn't expect to ask questions because I didn't expect to see the machine here tonight, but I'm going to ask this question, okay? Have you ever heard of flipping on these screens? Has that ever come into ESS's discussions about what takes place? Flipping?
No.
The term flipping?
No.
Okay. Okay. The reason I bring that up is apparently sometimes when voters had used, and I don't know if this was 2016 or 2017, it goes back a ways, that when you touch the screen, sometimes when the voter touches the screen, the machine interprets it differently, okay, and that's called flipping. It was identified by your company, and I didn't bring all the information because I didn't expect you to be here tonight, but you might want to review that, because the reason that they said the equipment flipped and that there was a lot of personal information, that there was information that was given that shouldn't have been given, is that there was a calibration error. Have you ever heard that?
I heard about an instance in New Jersey where they have machines like you do, and it was with the coding, and where they had,
The software, but you're talking about a touch screen system? system?
It was a calibration error, that's what they said,
You
and
have to calibrate the screen.
the machines were flipping votes from the screen, meaning a voter would select one candidate, but a different candidate would be selected by the machine, which ESS quoted was blamed on calibration error, okay? And I was just wondering if that came up in discussion, because I was at the meetings. I heard nothing like that at all about the touchscreen system, which is why I questioned.
Yeah, and that's why this isn't a touch screen. This is a ballot marking device.
Oh,
Well, if it does flip to a different candidate, you're going to see it on the screen, and you're going to see it on your ballot when you print it. That's what the voter verification part's all about. But every screen is part of our house. Calibrate every screen before they go out the door.
that's what they said. Yes, you can, but
Calibrate every screen on any touch screen, on any vendor. You want to calibrate.
well, that was expected. But in 2017 and 2011, as recent as 2017, there were some issues, and I'm not saying it's in that machine now. Okay, I'm saying that did happen, and full disclosure means that if there's something in the systems that has had a problem, that's for $3 million, we should be able to discuss
I agree
it.
with you, and I can assure you it wasn't this machine because we're just rolling it out. It's a brand new machine that we had built over the last 2 years,
Okay.
2.5 years.
Well, I could get a response. I'll find out
Yeah,
what you're
please do.
talking about and get you an answer.
And the other part of that was that the calibration systems, because these machines are lighter and they travel in trucks and things, that one of the things they worried about was that the calibration would be out of calibration by being jostled in a truck. And I know that sounds petty, but that's what they were talking about in the research that was done.
All right, so I'll get you an answer because I'm not quite sure.
I'm bringing things up. I wasn't going to talk about it tonight. I'll talk about it more tomorrow, but when we bring it up for full discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Tara, go ahead.
That's okay. I had a follow-up question to that. In addition to that flip, I just recently read an article, and it cited that the New York State Board of Elections on March 7th of this year cited that they had acknowledged errors in this kind of machinery with not only flip votes, but also autocast, and if a voter does not actually cast a vote, like let's just say there's 5 people they could vote for in different categories, and they only wanted to vote for one person, they're like, I don't know any of these other people, I'm not voting for these offices. Could those votes be auto-cast, or could they be, or are they going to be left blank? And if they are left blank, how is a voter going to be able to check that they left that blank if they auto-cast their vote? That was something that was brought up in this article.
I'll have to read the article.
I'll give it to you.
And I'm not
It's
sure
right.
what the AutoCast is. Is it a paper-based system? Is it the older
It
system?
lists ESS right here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're getting way into the weeds on things that are not possible with this machine. The whole point of having the paper backup or the ballot marking device is, like he said, this is like a giant iPad, just as it would be for some of the other systems that have a smaller iPad.
Mm-hmm.
You're picking your selections, it's sending it to a printer, it's printing here. So if there's a flip, there's a calibration issue, if there's something happening where electronically you think that this is changing your vote, it's going to print out your selections. You have not voted yet until you look at that piece of paper, verify that it says exactly who you voted for, and if you have a problem because you don't trust the barcodes and you think it's going to tabulate differently, you can spit your ballot out, feed it back in, and have it read it back to you based on the barcodes and make sure that it matches what you voted for. You can verify it on your own if you don't trust the system. It eliminates any of there's no flipping because this is not casting your ballot. It's printing your selections. That's it. It does not cast your ballot until you verify that piece of paper and it gets scanned on its way into the bin. These are two separate, they're attached, they're two separate pieces of equipment. It's just like some of those other systems, it's just like if you marked a bubble and then you took it over to a separate scanner and fed it through, except you don't have to go to 2 different stops here. It's doing it for you. Instead of walking to a separate location to scan in your vote, you say, yes, I want to scan my vote, press the button, and it scans.
Right, I understand what you're saying, but like I've used Scantron machines where, you know, you have a test that you use at a college and you put the thing in and it still gets it wrong. So that's not that convincing to me.
I'm saying if you are concerned that the human readable wording on your ballot is not going to match the barcode that's getting scanned, you can spit it out, feed it back in, and it will tell you on the screen the selection. It's going to read the barcode back to you. This barcode is for Tara Zorinsky.
And then it goes back into the machine, and then what happens if you don't have all the votes on it? Like if you don't fill in all the bubbles, what happens to those bubbles that are not filled out?
Well, there are no bubbles. And
well,
it doesn't.
I'm using your analogy that you just said. Like if you filled it out, if you were filling out bubbles.
It reads only the votes that you have cast. If there's a race that you didn't want to vote for, then you just didn't vote for it.
Right. So my concern in this article was that after you put that ballot back in the machine, those votes could be cast for you by the machine itself. If the machine had malware or a programming error or anything, just because it is a piece of machinery. That's all I'm saying is that's my concern because I read it in the article. I understand that you're telling me that that's not possible, but when you're talking about machinery, I think
how is it going to get malware when it's not connected to a network?
No, can I jump in here for a moment? I have to disagree with you, Amy. Any machine can have an error. Okay, I don't care what piece of equipment it is; it can have a problem.
Of course,
and let me quote something from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of State testing that was done by Secretary Robert Torres, Acting Secretary of the Commonwealth. I wasn't going to do this, but since you brought it up, 2018. Test process and findings for the ESS company. This uses 5.0.0.0, correct?
No, it does not.
What does this use? 60/20, okay. What happened was, 60/40, I'm sorry, yes. When they did the testing, they found out that, and this goes back to touching the screen, which you guys, it's just, I don't agree with it. The examiner noted a message stating, and this goes back to John's question, a straight party selection would be removed once the selection of a candidate not in the second straight party section was selected. The test was halted and analysis was performed. This behavior was traced to a setting in electionware to remove the straight party selection when the voter's action is to vote for a different party other than the straight party selection. During the execution of the test cases, the setting to remove the straight party selection was deselected. Okay? Mm-hmm. The automark was then loaded with new election, and the test was executed to observe the automark's behavior with the new setting. I'm sorry.
This is not the system. Okay. That's not the system.
I said the wrong thing, but the examiner halted the evaluation and further researched it. Okay?
You're talking about an automark system. That is not.
Well, just so you know that any system, from what I've seen on the DS200s and the XLs, okay, I got the results here. They did have issues, so you can't say the machine is fault-proof.
No, but this machine has been federally and state certified through a rigorous set of standards. That same set of standards where they found problems.
Yes.
Which is why we're not using that system. We're using the system.
Well, there's no question that you made changes in the system. That's why I asked about this system if it's a different system. Because what you said was it's almost identical
voter experience.
Almost identical to the machine that we were using. Now, what I'm worried about as a councilman is that we are getting into convenience versus security. That's my concern.
Sure.
Can I address something right there?
Yeah.
About the security. A couple of things. Our system has 3 layers of encryption within the system.
Yes.
One layer, for instance, when they order, well, there's a corporate code that is encrypted. It's 256-bit encrypted key. Every time an election gets programmed, it sets another 256-bit encrypted key as the code for that election. So any time we load that code in this machine, and then they program the election, that election stick has the same 256-bit encrypted key on it.
Okay.
So if I came in here with my USB stick and stuck it in, it won't even see it.
Got it.
It'll just say, that's invalid media. It has to have all 3 layers of encrypted data on there, It matches that one election. The next election, that key is different. So I can take a stick from an old election and stick it in, it's not gonna see it. It's gonna say it's an invalid
I agree.
media device. One other thing, and I can bring up even about your current system where you're talking about they're identical. Your existing system is a direct record electronic machine, it's a DRE. So when I go in and I push a button and I vote for Mr. Warner and I vote for you, Tara, when I hit that button that says cast vote, prove to me you got that vote. You can't prove you got that vote. There's no way you can look at something. So that is a big deal. I can prove, I've got a piece of paper here with your name on it. What Charles had said earlier about a recount, for instance, when you're doing risk limiting audits, and the state will require that. And we do them in New Jersey all the time. We look at every one of these ballots, and you can read this piece of paper through the same machine that counts your big mail-in ballots, if you want to run those through. We count every one of these. And then they have to do a risk limiting audit, which is all random numbers, 20 dice we have to roll, and all kinds of things, seed numbers and things. But as he said, we had a tie election. Very first time this machine was used in that county, and we came out perfect. And we haven't missed any one of those risk limiting audits yet. We're always right on the spot. So I'm very proud of this machine. I love this machine. The experience for the voter is simple. It's easier for the poll workers to use. To close the polls at night, it's one little rocker switch, and they hit the button, your results print. They're finished. When they're finished, this closes up, this pushes down, and they go home. So there's not a whole lot of work involved with it. But the experience for the voter, I just think when the voter uses the machine, there's not a whole lot of training involved with the voters.
I'm not opposed to anything you're saying right now.
Well, it's the DRE. I mean, like I said, I can't prove you. I know you got the vote.
Yeah.
Your machines now are good machines, no question. I'm not knocking your machine, but the state of Pennsylvania said you can't have DREs anymore. They're going to decertify them. So you do have to go somewhere. And every system out there, if they have timing marks around the edges, they're barcodes. And it's looking at those barcodes to determine voter position.
Okay, let me ask you one more question, and then I'll shut up, okay? And then anyone else can have, because if for some reason there's legislation that says you must have paper ballots, must be a hand ballot situation, would that obsolete these pieces of equipment?
This was a concern that others had, and there is federal legislation out there. Rather than being concerned about it, we reached out to the Congresswoman to find out what the legislation was, and it included ballot marking devices. So this is even still in the dingle legislation.
The only reason I bring that up, Charles, is because there are 33 counties that are using, yes, that's the map, and that's what they look like. All those dark green, those are the counties that are using a ballot marking system, okay? And there are 5 counties, including Philadelphia, Berks, Crawford, Bradford, and Greene, who are not using that system. And Lehigh County went with your paperless system, okay, which we never got to see, okay? And that system, the reason they did go for it was because of the obsolete concern.
Well, the city of Philadelphia bought 3,700 of these.
Well,
The ballot marking
that's,
device. Berks County also now has a ballot marking device.
I realize that, but is there a guarantee that if something comes through for legislation and they say...
The legislation did not require hand-marked ballots. It required voter-verifiable paper ballots.
Okay.
That's what this is. It did not require, because to be ADA compliant, you cannot require hand-marked ballots. There are people with physical and visual impairments that are not able to do that.
Yes.
It cannot be required.
Well, I'm telling you that the legislation I saw...
I called the Congresswoman's office myself. It's HR 379.
I spoke with Congressman Cartwright about it, too. I did the discussions on those levels also. And I will tell you that there is legislation coming forth, HR 1, that could, it's not the Dingle lady, whatever her name is. I can't think of her name. Debbie. That's not the one, okay? That could obsolete systems that don't meet the requirements of a hand ballot system. And I don't know the definitions well enough, to be honest with you, about what's required for hand ballot or written ballot.
But that's still...
It would be a violation of ADA compliance.
Okay, so you're saying that there's a guarantee that this system will pass if something changes?
They can't require hand-marked ballots.
That's a yes or no question.
There's no particular legislation right now that is pending, but there is no guarantee that hand-marked ballots will also not be found to be non-compliant. So what you're asking for is a false equivalent of this one is not guaranteed, well, the other one's not guaranteed either. We may reach a point in which we realize that using the hand-marked systems, not only, and this was something that was brought up in the Elections Commission, but not here, that the hand-marked systems require us to print out 100%, 110% of all of the votes cast. Now, God willing, that will happen one day that we need that. But in this upcoming primary election, we may see 18%. We're going to be wasting a significant amount of paper. Now, there may be a time in which we realize that that's not only not ecologically sound, but that is a huge waste of resources, and the federal government decides that they will no longer allow hand-marked ballots because they waste so much paper and it has such a drain on. We could not answer that question nor this one.
Well, again, it's a $3 million investment that we don't know could change.
This is a much less investment.
Okay.
But that almost doesn't matter, because even if you pick the other machine could be obsolete too. So any of these machines seem to be like obsolete at any point in time.
My concern is that we don't lose too much of our investment here.
And you know what, Councilman, you're absolutely on sound ground to ask for that guarantee that obviously can't be given. You are responsible. It is your duty to ask those questions, and no guarantee can be given. We've lost machines before. Machines our folks loved. So that's just can't be done. And I wouldn't stand here and I wouldn't have anybody tell you that it could be.
Okay.
I do have if you don't mind engaging in a bit of a colloquy. Have we seen any evidence in the United States of America of any hacking from any foreign government in a particular election on the votes themselves? Have there been any?
We've heard stories.
It depends on who you ask that question.
We'll have the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Central Intelligence.
I will tell you this, based on what the administration showed us when Mr. Mace did his study, and he brought forth the information about the system not being connected in any way, that machine is not hackable. Absolutely correct. What my concern is that the integrity of the machine and the integrity of the information on the machine is intact, and that it doesn't be misrepresented somehow in the printing.
And it's a perfectly valid concern. And what I would tell you about that, based on my limited understanding of technology, vote fixing, people in cemeteries voting, at the end of the day, it takes human beings with malintent to do it, right? And they generally have to, it's like a knife fight, they generally have to be up real close. And that's why I make Dertinger go to this. Nobody's getting past him. But another reason I stood up tonight was, we have our ESS folks here, and with respect to any technical question, I know, at 2 o'clock in the morning tonight, somebody's going to wake up and go, I wish I would have asked that. Well, any questions for them that you think need to be asked, please ask them.
Well, you know what the funny part was, when we were at the workshop, we weren't allowed to speak. We're in the audience.
Well, you have the money. You get to ask anything you want.
That's why, I'm asking these questions now, because technically I was respecting the poll workers and the people that were there who had the right to ask those questions.
No, please keep asking them if you have them. That's what they're here for.
Sorry, Council.
Question now.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
So people talked about jostling and stuff. So what if a machine breaks? How many are we buying?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. We're buying roughly 40 more than we have now.
Okay.
So that we will have capacity in the future. We have our custodial staff as well as O&M staff on standby, just as we have done with every successive machine, even the votomatics that everyone loved. We always had one in the wings that we could bring out. And the difference between setting an election on a votomatic as opposed to one of these is replacing a USB card, whereas in the past it was a huge amount of work. But we do have the trucks available to replace anything, and to that extent we are also identifying polling places that have a lot of voters and fewer machines, and we're going to be increasing the number of machines in several locations just to reduce lines. So we will have extras on hand just in case of anything.
So I have a follow-up question to
But,
that.
you know, to that same extent, when you drop your cell phone, everything stays there. It doesn't move around, it doesn't jostle, and this is really no different than in the technology than your cell phone is.
I just think about myself in the grocery line and how many times that people have to come over and help me. So, you know, as long as there's assistance
you're
there
the
for
one.
people like me,
right.
then we'll be good. But if the screen failed, and obviously there's always glitches, what's the backup? And so you're saying we
Yes.
have backup,
Yeah,
you
we are-
have
we are-
backup, you had texts, we're
Yes.
covered.
I just want to understand how that works then, because he said that there's a key for each
No, I do
election.
the self-checkout.
Is that, so is that key for each machine in the election, or for each election, election-wide, each has a key? So if you have a machine that, let's say, for some reason breaks at 12 noon, and there's like several hours more left of the election, what happens to the votes in that machine now that it's broken? And then you have all the rest of the machine, you have a new machine wheeled in. What happens?
You want to?
You and Christine was taking, I was ready to hire you.
No, this, you-
The machines are stored, the votes are stored on the stick in here. It's 256-bit encryption on the stick too. So all the results are written here. They're also written to memory, and we have every ballot.
Okay, so if something happens and that machine breaks, you still have the memory stick,
Everything's in
and
there.
now the new one's just going to take over where the other one.
We can take the memory stick out of here and take the
Put it in
ballot
another one.
cards out of here, roll in an empty machine that would have already gotten that election code loaded at the warehouse, the key.
Would anybody know the election code before the election such that they would be able to, just like you're saying, take that memory stick out of there, replace it with another one, and like fix votes?
It's an encrypted key. Even I don't know what it is. I mean,
Who makes the encryption?
The software will come up with it's a randomly generated 256-bit.
By just some
It's
machine?
a random key that's uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters. But when you
Yeah,
look
like
at
my
it, you see like a
passwords.
lowercase
it's
e, that might be a
256,
zero.
it's 256.
I'm just asking because,
That's how it works.
no, I mean, there's people who
I
do
know.
stuff like that in their day job. Do you know what I mean?
We do.
I'm not the one doing it. I don't know how to do it,
That's what
but,
Charles said. If they're gonna do it, they have to do it up close. Otherwise,
but that means, that means that somebody who's on the election board or volunteering in the election would have to be the one to do that,
Chris-
right?
No, they wouldn't even have that key. They wouldn't even know what it was.
Oh,
No.
they don't have the key.
No, nobody would.
Who has the key?
It's on a stick. It's generated within the software, and the software will put it on that stick. We don't even see what the key
Not-
is.
not
We can
human.
look at the software, you don't see it.
Not human.
It's not human.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to comment. I'm not on the committee, and I appreciate the questions, and it's important. And I learned a little bit more tonight that maybe I wasn't aware of. But I appreciate your demonstration. I think you guys did a great job on that. And I know how important this is. The most important thing. This is the most important thing of being Americans, and we got to get it right. But I've been to the CCAP stuff. I've read about all this. I know it's state certified. I know all the counties that purchased this. There's a lot of capital involved in this, and I plan on supporting it because I believe it's a good machine. And whether there's going to be some issues down the road, well, but I plan on supporting it, and I think ESS came up with a really good machine. And I looked at the other machines, and I wasn't impressed, but with this one I was. So, yeah.
And I do want to answer one of your questions from earlier. I'm taking my ballot card and putting it in backwards. With the top corner in the
Okay.
upper left.
We'll take it.
It will not.
Oh,
It
it won't
dings.
take it.
It won't. It'll beep for
There you
7
go.
seconds, and if I put it in upside down when the beeping stops.
That might not be the best thing. Oh,
How is it?
We can't program it to say whatever you like.
no. No,
Be-
that would be bad.
Before we degrade any further, I want to thank Christine and Joe for being here, which we didn't really know you were going to be here. So apologize for, apologize. And I want to leave something to laugh at. Okay, Brian Varner is a semantic special projects researcher on cybersecurity, leading the company's cyber war on emerging technologies development. He worked at the National Security Agency as a tactical analyst. And what he did was, he wanted to reverse engineer one of these things. I don't know if you know about this or not. He went on eBay and bought 2 of them for $100.
Oh, yeah?
And he took them apart. They delivered them at his door, okay? And he was able to reverse, and by the way, all the information was still inside. There was no cleansing of any information. So I just thought I'd share that with you, to let you know about security.
He bought them on eBay.
He bought them on eBay. It's a real live.
Because I was going to say, we can't do that count. No.
Sure you can.
No.
There's $100 a piece. If I had known, we would have bought the new machines on eBay. I didn't know. But I brought that up so you know that there are things out there that are questionable, as you talk about security. And I realize that this machine is not hackable from the outside. But again, I know that convenience has become quite an issue in this county, from the poll workers to the people who are standing in lines. And I don't want to forget about the security of the system rather than the convenience for these. I don't care if people, poll workers are there for a reason, and other people are there for reasons. And if people need help, they help. But to make it easy so that you can be lazier or whatever you want to call it, I don't buy into that. I think it has to do with the security of the data, the security of the system, and our voters deserve to know everything that's going on with these machines right now, because they're going to have questions, and yeah, there's going to be a line because someone's going to mess a button up, and our people who you're training, I understand, in that contract from what I saw, you're trained, you're mandated to train from what I saw. You're going to be doing all that, so I think it's important that everybody knows that. Okay.
And that article there, I'm curious. I haven't heard about that one before, other than Professor Appel and Princeton University, and he bought 2 of your existing machines on eBay. Of course. They're the ones that he took apart and reverse engineered.
Yeah,
firmware.
there you go. So you did know about that.
The machines you currently use.
No, but I mean you did know about that.
I knew about that. I never heard about them taking one of these.
Yeah, this is a national security guy who took it apart and said, I bet I can have fun with it. And all the information that was encrypted or whatever is done in those things was still in the machine.
I know that we've given it to White Hat out in Idaho.
They haven't, not the Excel.
No, I don't know. No, you know what they did? They didn't tell you the machines. Okay. They kept that out of the picture. Well, yeah, there's no.
The study is not on this machine.
The study is clearly it's not this machine.
Oh, it's not this machine. No. I was wondering how you would be able to get that so quickly on eBay.
No, he bought it in 2016. To be honest with you.
Some counties, when they dispose of their old equipment,
Are
they
we
wind
adjourning?
up in a dump and
We need a-
clear it.
No, we have 2 more items? I'm sorry.
Motion to recommend to full council.
Second.
Okay, you're recommended to go to council tomorrow.
Will you-
Thank you again, Christine and Joe.
Hold it out there for a minute.
Paula, second.
Sorry, Engelbert Humperdinck is next. What? Huh?
What?
Are you going to be here tomorrow evening?
Not after
Should I-
tonight.
Well, yeah. Are you staying over? I guess. Are you gonna?
Are you staying over?
Are you really?
Come
Do you have
over
this
to
in a
305
truck somewhere? You
Roseberry.
can bring it
I'll
back
help
in
you
or some
tomorrow
secure place
before the
for-
meeting.
Okay. Well, no. That's
guys
for
staying
the
over?
administration to decide. No, I've seen it. We saw
Okay,
this one.
okay.
Well, that's the good. Our solicitor brought up a good point. There may be questions from the public which we can entertain tomorrow, which you'll be here if you would please. I think we can request that, can't we?
What time? This will be
6:30. It's an ask. If you can do it, it would be really appreciated because I think. No, I don't think there were any council meetings at the workshop. I don't think there were very many people at the workshop. I know I was there with my wife, and I know Charles was there and a few people. But at Lehigh County, when we were there, it was mostly poll workers. So I'd like to. I mean, there's a lot of questions out there that should be asked again. Okay. I mean, I have more, but I'm not gonna. That's enough. Yes, Charles.
Please, him and Amy.
Thank you again. Thank you. Okay, resuming.
Engelham,
If we
Brighton,
can,
Davies.
Engelbert, Humperdinck, and Davies. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be making fun of it. I apologize. A little brevity at
Brighton, Davies.
little brevity at this point.
I understand totally. They're the respondent that we're here to recommend to you for this contract. The county is self-insured for purposes of workers' compensation. One requirement of the state's workers' compensation law is that we have a properly credentialed accident and illness prevention coordinator to oversee that self-insured program. We've had one. We were not really pleased with their service or the price they were charging. I'll be honest with you, I had more conversations with the gentleman about his bill getting paid than I ever did about any losses or anything. These people are people I met at the Lehigh Valley Coalition on Healthcare big annual symposium last year. I expressed that we'd be putting this out for bid. The gentleman followed up with me for months after that. They were also recommended by BSI, our healthcare insurance consultant, and our third-party administrator of the workers' comp claims that we use now, National NLA. So, also their price came in very nice at under, it's $10,000 a year less than what the others will charge, and they have a comprehensive package of services that they're offering us in exchange for this. Just want to touch on one other thing. This would be a 3-year contract. That is why the price is over $100,000. It's roughly $63,000 a year.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah,
Go.
Just so you can explain that, I went through this, just the only question I'll have for now is, 3-year terms for $195,000 with a total of $325 if the 2 1-year renewals are exercised.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. It's the initial term is 3 years. The language will be written such that it can be renewed at no price increase for 2 possible 1-year terms, like only
At
1
the
year
end
at a
of
time.
3 years?
Yeah, only 1 year at a time. But it's my
195 is for the first 3 years, then?
Yes.
195. Okay.
Yeah.
And 325 is if we get 2 more years.
I believe the way Kathy Anderson calculates that is she has to add that 325 is if all 5 years, if both 1-year options were exercised, then we would have a 5-year contract for $325,000.
Huh?
I gotcha.
I'm lost there.
I'm sorry.
Lost
I'm
there.
not. It must be me.
Don, do you get that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is 9.
Breaks out as different numbers.
If the 1-year renewals are exercised. So if you have
18, 19, 390.
renewals,
No.
because if you multiply
65 a year.
Yeah.
195,000
No. The 195,000 should be divided by 3 for the 1-year price. So it's roughly $65,000
a year.
There you go.
For 5 years,
And
it would
then-
be 325.
There you go.
If you add another $65,000 if that 1-year extension is approved, that would be another $65,000.
Okay.
And then if the one after that is approved, that would be another $65,000.
For a total.
You add those 2 65s onto the 195. That's what I was trying to say, and I apologize if I was too confusing.
No,
I know I was.
It's 60, whether we do it or not,
It's 60,000.
Exactly.
Duly noted. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Interesting name.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you.
Motion
Any
to
question?
move
Any
forward.
further questions about mathematics?
Just one quick question. This is a competitive negotiation. How many bids were submitted and how many were taken out?
3 were submitted. One of them was from PMA, which is a former company the county has used, but I'm sorry, our history under PMA's leadership of the program was not good. The workers' comp claim costs were much higher. I know that there were some people, including Mr. Barron, that felt that PMA may not truly own all of that. He felt maybe the administration made decisions that were equally to blame. I wasn't feeling comfortable about taking a chance. And the other bidder was the provider we have now, whose service I really didn't think was
Adequate.
adequate, yes.
Okay, so we had 3 competitive bids, and this one was the one you're recommending. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Motion
your
to
time.
move
Motion
forward
to move
to
it forward?
Second.
Yes. Okay, and finally, the point-and-click care technologies. Anyone here to talk? Yes? Mr. McClure?
Ms. Stewart-King is here. She really wants the system, I think, and
As evidenced by the
we
fact
have
she
a-
waited.
We're too tired to talk
Stewart
about
King,
it.
and there is I believe, a representative from the company here to entertain any questions
Okay.
that council may have.
Good.
He's a trooper for being here.
Sorry.
Well,
Medications might be. That's right. So yes, I have the representative Scott from Point Click Care if you have any questions. They were the one out of the 3 people that we looked at that was just the best for Gracedale's fit. It's used in 84% of the homes in Pennsylvania. We just spoke with a nursing home who converted from the system we have to Point Click Care, and they are absolutely thrilled with their choice.
Mm-hmm.
So we made a lot of weighted decisions on where we went, and they had the best program.
Yeah.
I have a question about road testing it.
Yes.
Does that sound reasonable? Can we do that?
You want a test drive?
Yeah. No?
This
No-
isn't
no
a
test
Tesla,
drive?
you know.
We go to other facilities and we look.
So they have them at other facilities that you can
Right,
see? Okay.
Over 80% of facilities in Pennsylvania use this.
Yeah. So Manor Cares in the area use it. Cedar Brook uses it. I know Fair Acres, who is our sister down in Chester County, they are looking into using it as well.
Yeah, I have to say, when I went on my second tour with one of the nurses down at Gracedale, they were telling me about the Point Click, how much they wanted it, and how there were some nurses that they couldn't get to come to work because you don't use Point Click. So I think this is definitely a helpful system to have, that if you're talking about retaining the nursing staff that you have and bringing more in, that this is what you want.
Right. A couple of our agencies said they would consider coming on board with us if we got another system, and Point Click Care was the system they.
Which I think
Okay.
definitely important.
Further questions? Mr. Heckman?
How many machines are we getting total?
Oh,
It's not a machine,
It's not a
it's a
machine.
system to
Not
go
the
into
voting
the
machine.
My brain is
Still on the thing. Okay.
Do we want him to speak at all?
Yeah, please. Step up, your name.
Since he's
and-
the guy that's
Thank you.
the
Apologies.
expert?
Apologies.
Sorry, I'm Scott Cosmore. I'm with Point Click Care.
How many point and clicks?
Yeah, exactly. What specific question do you have, sir?
Well, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's a tablet.
No.
It's software.
Let me, I'll explain it kind of
So
briefly.
there's a terminal over there.
Not really. So this is an entirely web-based SaaS system. Okay, so all you have to have is an internet browser, a username, and a password. The encryption exceeds the industry standards. So whatever devices Ms. Stewart King, Mr. Dunlap, and Ms. Anderson want to buy, as long as they meet our specs, you can use them. Now, there are some devices that are being replaced. I think this is what you're referring to for point of care. Point of care is where the CNAs in the facility document all that care. That is not really within Point Click Care's purview. Okay, they'll purchase those in addition to what we provide.
So you're the web-based, you're the
Yes, ma'am.
record-based, or
Yes.
the web-based system.
We are we're an electronic record, health record, but we also have a billing component as well.
Okay.
So it's fully integrated, and it is. Well, I know for the sake of time, I'll just leave it at that. If you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Can I ask you my follow-up question?
Go ahead.
But you're available then, depending on, like, upgrades, like software upgrades and that would be extra above and beyond?
No, actually not. For instance, there's a major regulatory change happening on October 1st of this year.
It happens a lot.
It is huge. Almost annually it happens, but this one happens to be one of the biggest changes in the last 5 years. We have spent over $2 million to date over the past year and a half, incorporating all the changes into our software. None of our clients are charged for that regulatory enhancement.
Oh, nice.
So all regulatory enhancements are embedded in the price of the
I vote to move it forward. Yeah, that sounds
I'll
good to
second
me.
it.
Okay. That's very nicely done.
Okay.
Second, thank you.
Anything else? All right.
No, but thank you for your patience and all this. I apologize.
You know what? I got to learn a lot about ballot machines today. This is great. I mean, I'm like,
When you go on Jeopardy, you can answer all the questions.
We know that.
If you have a chance, would you tell me what you learned? I didn't learn anything.
That's true.
We're glad you're here. Okay.
What does your county use?
Yeah.
By the way?
He doesn't.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, sorry for the delays.
He learned a lot about voting machines.
Does anyone need 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Is that okay with everyone? 5 minutes? Okay. Break. We'll mute.
Wake Michael up.
Is Michael here? I don't even see Michael hiding in the corner.
See? What?
Lori, can I see you for a minute?
Yes, ma'am.